Officials say at least 59 migrants and a baby died after their boat sank early Sunday.
Initial reports shows their overloaded boat clashed with the stormy seas of Italy's southern Calabria region. More details of this later in the news. Good evening, I am Ricky Mathay.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. expands Kadiwa Caravan to cope with food crisis. DFA continues to protest China's unlawful presence in West Philippine Sea. North Korea claims U.S. drills amount to declaration of war. Social media influencers' gruesome death shocked Asian region. And MMFF announces 8 films for Summer Festival.
As promised, the Marcos administration has expanded the Kadiwa Caravan with the launching of Kadiwa ng Pangulo. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. this morning led the launching of the Kadiwa store in Cebu City. Nadine Aguilar tells us more.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. launched today the Kadiwa ng Pangulo in Cebu City. The project aims to provide consumers with fresh and affordable agricultural and fishery products. In his speech, President Marcos was elated with the expansion of Kadiwa Caravan, as he notes that the program will help Filipinos cope with the effects of rising food prices. The project will also increase income of local farmers, fisherfolk, and small enterprises.
Yun lamang, napuna namin ay napaka-popular at gustong-gusto ng tao dahil nga naman may bilihin na mas mura kaysa sa makukuha sa labas. Kaya nung habang tumagal ang panahon, sabi ko dapat naman siguro patuloy na natin. Kaya naging Kadiwa ng Pangulo na ngayon ay sinimulan natin dito sa Cebu.
The Kadiwa program is a farm-to-consumer market chain that eliminates intermediaries, allowing local producers to generate higher income by selling their products directly to consumers. The President had earlier promised to extend the Kadiwa program beyond the holiday season to continue helping Filipinos amid the rising cost of basic commodities due to inflation. To date, there are more than 500 Kadiwa stores throughout the country. Marcos says the government also plans to launch Kadiwa para sa Manggagawa that will be led by the Department of Labor and Employment.
Patuloy namin gagawin, padadamihin natin, palalakihin natin, at pararamihin natin. Mas importante ay paramihin, lalo na sa mga lugar na talagang hirap ang tao at hindi pa kaya ang mga presyuhan kung nasa palengke. Kaya ito na ang aming sagot doon sa nagiging krisis dito sa ating pagkain, sa ating pagtaas ng presyo.
President Marcos also acknowledged the efforts of various government agencies behind the Kadiwa program, such as the DOLE, Department of Trade and Industry, Department of the Interior and Local Government, Department of Social Welfare and Development, and the local government of Cebu. At least 50 exhibitors are participating in the 2-day Kadiwa Caravan, where consumers can buy rice at least 25 pesos per kilogram, fish and agricultural products, and some of Cebu's popular delicacies and handicrafts. Nadine Aguilar, for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
For the first time, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim will visit the Philippines. The meeting is expected to intensify political, economic, and security relations between Malaysia and the Philippines, as well as address regional and global issues. Celine Dorado has the details.
Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim is scheduled to visit the country to discuss strengthening bilateral relations with the Philippines. Anwar confirmed in a Twitter post that he would like to meet with his counterpart, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., on the status of relations between the Philippines and Malaysia. Marcos and Anwar are expected to discuss how to further strengthen political, economic, and security relations between their two countries, as well as touch on regional and international issues. The officials said they would issue a press statement at their meeting on Wednesday. Malaysia has been the facilitator of the peace process between the Philippine government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF, which paved the way for the signing of a peace deal in March 2014. This is the first time the Malaysian Prime Minister will visit the country since taking office in November last year. Celine Dorado for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
As tensions between the Philippines and China worsen, the Department of Foreign Affairs continues to protest China's illegal presence in the Philippine waters. Paulo Ramos files this report.
The Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, has filed 77 diplomatic protests against China under the Marcos government over incidents in the West Philippine Sea. 10 of the diplomatic protests have been filed this year alone. In 2022, the Philippines submitted a total of 195 note verbals for China's violations. DFA spokesperson Maria Teresita Daza said the Philippines continues to protest the unrelenting and illegal presence of Chinese ships in the waters of the Philippine territory. The latest submission by the DFA to the Chinese embassy was in connection with the Philippine Coast Guard's report of at least 26 Chinese maritime militia vessels in Ayungin and Sabina Shoals on February 21. The presence of Chinese ships within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone follows a laser targeting at Ayungin Shoal on February 6, condemned by the US, Japan, and other countries. The DFA first insisted that harassment by Chinese vessels poses a threat to sovereignty and security in the area and that they have no power to enforce the Philippine EEZ law. Paulo Ramos for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
House Speaker Martin Romualdez calls for an emergency closed-door meeting tonight with the leadership of the Philippine National Police and the Department of Interior and Local Government. This amid the spate of high-profile crimes against politicians. Mian Corvera for the details.
House Speaker Martin Romualdez is bothered by the spate of armed attacks against politicians. The House leadership said it has become alarming since a high-profile slaying has happened almost every week. Romualdez says they invited PNP and DILG officials to find out what steps are being taken to prevent these kinds of heinous crimes. Particularly, the lower chamber will ask the police and the DILG what the problem is and how Congress can help solve these crimes. Romualdez believes that politics may be the motive behind the ambush incidents since most of the victims are politicians. Recently, the vehicle of a mayor in Maguindanao was attacked in Pasay City. Earlier, the vice mayor of Apari, Cagayan died in an ambush. Also this February, the Grupo Plano del Sur Governor Mamintal Adyong was also attacked in Maguindanao. Adyong and another escort survived the attack, but 4 of his police escorts died in the incident. Mian Corvera for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The 5-man advisory group is set to review and process this week 800 resignation papers submitted by senior officials of the Philippine National Police. Randy Bernardino for the details.
The 5-man advisory group will be meeting twice a week to evaluate the courtesy resignations of senior police officials. Last Friday, the committee finalized the guidelines and processed the groups for evaluation. Police Colonel Red Maranan, spokesman for the advisory group, says Friday's meeting was attended by Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Mag-along, Undersecretary Isagani Neres, former Defense Secretary Gilbert Gibo Teodoro, and PN Chief Police General Rodolfo Azurin. After finalizing the House rules, the group immediately evaluated and processed 118 resignation papers. The group will continue processing the remaining 800 papers this week. Maranan assured a fair, objective, and judicious assessment of the committee on the papers of PNP's senior officials. It will depend on the availability of the advisory group members if the meeting will be face-to-face or through video conferencing. Randy Bernardino for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Bad weather and dangerous terrain hamper the retrieval operation for the bodies of the four Cessna plane passengers that crashed in the vicinity of Mayon Volcano. Kamalig Mayor Carlos Erwin Balita Jr. said another 3 days are needed to bring down the bodies. In an interview with various media outlets, Balito says the remains of the passengers, a pilot, a co-pilot, and 2 Australian passengers were already placed in cadaver bags. The local chief executive says the bodies need to be brought to an area where a helicopter can pick them. Balito added that the retrieval team carrying the bodies trekked 300 meters from the crash site. The victims were identified as Pilot Captain Rufino James Crisostomo Jr. and co-pilot Joel Martin, and their foreigner passengers Simon Chipperfield and Carthy Santanam.
The Commission on Audit, or COA, will start transitioning from paper-based to digital-driven audits. In a statement, the COA says the move is part of modernizing its public auditing practice. In a statement posted on its website, COA Commissioner Roland Pondoc reported that the state auditing firm is implementing an audit modernization program, or AMP, by optimizing the use of science, technology, and innovation. These aim to enhance COA's resilience in times of crises or emergencies, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. There are 5 major initiatives under COA's audit modernization program, which include development of audit service continuity plan, which contains continuity strategies and mechanisms in dealing with the adverse impacts of any disruptive events and aims to safeguard personnel by providing them with tools and skills to capacitate them. Building capacity to perform remote audits through the use of the electronic document portal, which is a facility enabling state auditors to request for audit documents from the auditees remotely and the submission of documents in electronic form. Use of business intelligence, advanced data analysis, and machine learning capabilities to perform heavy analysis on the entire population of data. Building up COA's capability to electronically accept records and to securely store the same to effectively centralize COA storage for digital documents sufficient enough to support the influx of incoming electronic data from the entire government, and the development of use of an information system that will allow the online filing of pleadings and accept electronic mode of payment for the same. The shift to digital-driven audits and modernizing the state agency's audit program will make the work of state auditors easier and more effective.
House Speaker Martin Romualdez urged Malacanang to impose a one-strike policy against tax collectors who will fail to meet their target revenue collection. Romualdez says he informed President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. about his proposal. The Speaker insists the government's national budget is compromised each time revenue collection was not met. Romualdez remains confident that through the one-strike policy, the government can collect appropriate revenue to fund its socialized program. He also vows for Congress to strictly exercise its oversight power to look into and ensure that funds allocated to government agencies are utilized properly for their programs.
The 9th price adjustment for petrol in 2023 is set to happen later at midnight. Caltex will cut the price of their products at 12:01 a.m. Meanwhile, independent player Clean Fuel will be on the rollback. 70 centavos per liter will be slashed on the price of gasoline, 1 peso and 30 centavos for every liter of diesel, and 1 peso and 80 centavos per liter of kerosene or gasoline. The oil price rollback of companies will be followed tomorrow at 6 a.m. by Pilipinas Shell, Sea Oil Philippines, Petrogas, and Jetty Petroleum.
Metro Manila's COVID-19 positivity rate had a negligible decrease in the past week. In a tweet, Octa research fellow Dr. Guido David says that from 1.7% on February 18, the National Capital Region's positivity rate is slightly down to 1.6% as of February 25, 2023. However, there is a significant increase in positivity rate observed in South Cotabato from 2.8% to 13%, and in Misamis Oriental from 4.3% to 6.5% in the same period. Cebu and Negros Occidental logged the lowest positivity rate with 0.8% from 1.4% and 1.8% respectively. Over the weekend, the Department of Health reported 117 new COVID-19 cases with 14 deaths, 5 of which came from NCR. The DOH also reported 119 recoveries with 9,327 active cases. For today, DOH is projecting 100 to 150 new cases of COVID-19. Coming up, new quake shakes Turkey and Syria. Ukraine expresses concern about China and Belarus meeting. And North Korea says U.S. drills amount to declaration of war. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break.
Netizens, ako po si Joey De Leon ng Ono HBO, in short, Onibo. For more live and updates, makinig kayo. For more live and updates, don't forget to like and subscribe to Net25 TV. Okay?
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's stand together sa Net25.
Kailangan paghiwalayin mo silang dalawa. Dumadami ang mga kasinungalingan.
Mom! Ma'am Jangmi!
Paanong natakasan siya ni Jangmi? Hindi ko palalampasin. Itong nangyari, mga irresponsable! Ipaliwanag mo ngayon din kung bakit pinabayaan mo si Jangmi!
Ang totoo ay masisira ang tiwala. Magtatapos na rin ba ang kanyang pangarap?
Mabibigo ka at sisiguraduhin ko yan.
Mysterious Personal Shopper. Monday to Friday, dito sa Net25.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's stand together sa Net25.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Authorities say a 5.6 magnitude earthquake has hit eastern Turkey. Officials say the latest quake was centered in the town of Yeşilyurt in Malatya province. Emergency responders report the new quake has killed at least one person and wounded dozens of people. The tremor also caused some damaged buildings to collapse. This included a 4-story building where a father and daughter were trapped.
At least 59 migrants have died after an overloaded boat sank Sunday in the stormy seas off Italy's southern coast. 12 children were among the victims, including an infant just a few months old. According to Italian media, as the sun rose, the wooden boat broke up in violent waves. Pieces of the wreckage washed up over a 100-meter stretch off the shore. 80 people have been recovered, including some who managed to make it to shore after the vessel sank. A number of bodies have been found along the coast. Dozens more are missing. The AFP news agency quotes rescue officials as saying the boat had more than 200 people on board. Rescue teams provided humanitarian aid to survivors and arranged to have them taken to a migrant center. The boat departed from Turkey last week. The passengers came from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Somalia. A suspected smuggler aboard the vessel has been arrested by Italian police.
Two Israelis living in a West Bank settlement are dead following what officials call a Palestinian terror attack Sunday. The fatal shooting came just days after Israeli forces launched their deadliest West Bank raid in nearly 20 years. That attack in the northern city of Nablus left 11 Palestinians dead. Sunday's violence occurred just south of the city. It targeted a car on the main road through the town of Huwara. An emergency response spokesperson says two civilians had been taken to a hospital where they later died. Israeli security forces deployed along the road conducted a search of the area. The two victims were residents of a religious Jewish settlement close to Nablus. The West Bank is home to 2.9 million Palestinians and 475,000 Jewish settlers who live in state-approved settlements. Those settlements are considered illegal under international law. Israel has occupied the West Bank since the Six-Day War in 1967.
Fire has destroyed the largest market in the northeastern Nigerian city of Maiduguri. The governor of Borno State has announced emergency aid of more than $2 million, which is nearly 110 million pesos. Local media reports that the fire broke out about 2 a.m. Sunday morning. It was still raging 7 hours later. The inferno completely gutted the market. The flames quickly spread, destroying hundreds of vendors' shops in what is known as the Monday Market. There are no reports of casualties. The governor has ordered the military to secure the area to prevent looting. Many vendors say they watched businesses they had spent years working to build destroyed in seconds. Several traders tried to salvage what they could, but most lost everything. Cause of the blaze has not been determined.
A week after being abducted in Papua New Guinea, 3 hostages have been released. The 3, including a New Zealander, had been taken captive in the highlands by an armed group. Gunmen took the New Zealand man and 2 Papua New Guinea women hostage last Sunday in a remote and densely forested region. Police had been negotiating with the hostage takers, who had demanded a $1 million ransom. The kidnappers later dropped the asking price and a 24-hour deadline. Earlier in the week, the captors released another woman who was part of a group of academics and guides that had been kidnapped at gunpoint. Prime Minister James Marapes says the hostages had been freed after what he called covert operations. He says the original ransom was not paid but did not provide further details. The 3 freed captives are reported to be in reasonable health.
Saudi Arabia Foreign Minister Prince Faisal meets Ukraine President Zelensky and high-ranked Ukrainian officials. The encounter was the first visit done by an official Saudi delegation to Ukraine since the 1993 diplomatic relations between the two countries. Ukrainian Presidential Office head Andriy Yermak reports that Saudi Arabia will give Ukraine $100 million in humanitarian aid and $300 million in petroleum. The foreign minister added that their country could act as a third-party mediator for the freedom of the Ukrainian prisoners of war from Russia. We will continue to cooperate with our Ukrainian friends in order to solve the problem of war, as it affects not only Ukraine, it affects the whole world. Al Saud said. Last February 23, Saudi Arabia is one of the countries who voted in favor of the UN resolution that appeals to Russia to end hostilities in Ukraine and calls for the withdrawal of its forces.
Despite pressure from Western allies, Switzerland insists they will not confiscate frozen Russian funds. The Swiss Bankers Association also asserts there is no legal basis for confiscating Russian assets. State Secretariat for Economic Affairs spokesperson Fabian Mainfitch says restoration of Ukraine through expropriation of private assets of lawful origin without compensation is not permissible under Swiss law. However, he clarifies support for Ukraine will continue despite their stance on frozen Russian assets. Switzerland has been facing increasing U.S. and EU pressure to release the frozen funds for the reconstruction of Ukraine.
Mayor Alexander Simchi, she claims 2 people died and 3 more were wounded in western Ukraine. He says the 2 victims died in a hospital following a Russian drone attack. The Ukrainian armed forces say they took down 11 out of 14 shaded Russian drones. Kyiv's military base also reports they shoot down 9 Moscow drones. Meanwhile, a Russian official confirms they are trying to exhaust their air defenses and they split their drone attacks over Ukraine in 2 waves.
Russia's Federal Security Service has arrested 2 alleged members of Ukraine's SBU in Sevastopol. Officials say the men are suspected of sharing details about Russia's military facilities. Investigations reveal the individuals contacted Ukraine's Security Service of Ukraine and offered to be spotters in exchange for money. One of the suspects managed to send details to Kyiv forces, but the other was thwarted. Moscow prosecutors charged the suspects of treason and cooperation with a foreign state have been opened against them.
Chinese President Xi Jinping will host Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko from February 28 to March 2. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning declares Beijing is willing to work with Lukashenko to deepen mutual political trust. Xi and Lukashenko earlier announced an all-weather strategic partnership when the 2 met in the Uzbek city of Samarkand. Lukashenko's 3-day visit to China also comes after Beijing released a position paper on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The 12-point plan reiterated Xi's insistence as a neutral party between Moscow and Kyiv. Political analysts say Lukashenko is a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin and has backed Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Belarus allowed Moscow to use its territory to launch its attack on Ukraine last year. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed concerns over China and Belarus meeting. Reports say Zelensky has been trying to engage Xi in direct dialogue, but to no avail. Political analysts also claim if Beijing will play a robust role in supporting the Russian military, it could fund or fundamentally shift the momentum on the battlefield.
Chinese researchers say Beijing plans to compete with Elon Musk's Starlink by launching 13,000 satellites. Chinese authorities dubbed the project as codename GW. The GW constellation includes 12,992 Chinese satellites owned by China Satellite Network Group. The group claims that Chinese satellites could also be stationed in orbits where the Starlink constellation has not reached. The group states that the launch dates are indefinite, but it would rival the range of SpaceX's proposed network of more than 12,000 satellites by 2027.
Pyongyang leader Kim Jong-un has organized meetings to plan agricultural development as food shortages are reported in the country. Normally, such meetings are convened only once or twice a year. But Kim's plenary comes just 2 months after a previous one, which also focused on agricultural issues. Local reports claim there may be serious food shortages in North Korea currently. Pyongyang also appeared to have requested food aid from the World Food Program. Meanwhile, analysts believe Kim Joo-a's appearances at Pyongyang's major events are likely a preparation for a future inheritance transfer of power. Kim Joo-a is Kim Jong-un's daughter. Some say her prominent exposure in state media could also be aimed at strengthening domestic loyalty to the Kim family.
North Korea claims the U.S. and South Korean military drills are acts of declaration of war. Pyongyang's statement comes after Washington and Seoul conducted a tabletop exercise that focused on responses to a nuclear attack by North Korea. Washington earlier proposed a measure to denounce Pyongyang's latest ballistic missile launches. Yet, a Pyongyang official insists Washington's move is a clear violation of North Korea's right to self-defense. Kim Jong-un is not banned from firing cruise missiles under current UN sanctions, but the Thursday drill followed multiple weapons tests.
The U.S. Department of Energy says the coronavirus pandemic likely arose from a Chinese laboratory leak. Though the White House maintains that American intelligence remained divided on the issue, the classified reports marks a shift by the Energy Department, which had previously said it was undecided on how the virus emerged. The department now joins the Federal Bureau of Investigation in believing that the pandemic was the result of a mishap in a Chinese laboratory. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan also underscores a variety of views on the issue. He says right now there is not a definitive answer that has emerged from the intelligence community on the COVID leak. Meanwhile, China calls out those involved to stop stirring up claims about laboratory leaks and stop politicizing the origin tracing issue. Up next, more unmarked graves discovered at former residential school in Canada. Mexicans protest electoral reforms. And authorities charge Lebanese central bank governor with money laundering. Stay tuned as Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart, Arlex Trading and Construction Supplies.
Mga ka-PSL, ako diay si Gab Dagangon ng Davao Occidental Tigers. Para sa mainit action, sa hardcourt, tutok lang sa Pilipinas Super League. Ito ang liga ko.
Let's get together. Net 25.
Ang Best Public Affairs Program. And the star goes to Open for Business Net 25.
It is a signal to the world that we are open for business.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos, every Sunday, 9 p.m. This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders, Quezon City Motor Vehicle Inspection Center.
A very disturbing discovery in British Columbia, Canada. More unmarked graves found at a formal residential school there. Joshua Santillana tells us more.
Earlier this week, 17 suspected unmarked grave sites were found at a formal residential school in Port Alberni, British Columbia. 67 student deaths were recorded and documented at the former Alberni Indian Residential School. The Sishat First Nation led the search and spent the last 18 months finding potential graves of schoolchildren using ground-penetrating radar. The announcement of this discovery was given at a ceremony live-streamed last Tuesday. Majority of the attendees wore orange, the color that has come to symbolize victims of Canada's residential schools. The discovery of unmarked graves in areas of and surrounding formal residential schools in Canada was first announced back in May of 2021, when remains of 215 children were found at Kamloops Indian Residential School in British Columbia. About 150,000 children attended the residential schools and over 6,000 students died. The last Indian residential school in Canada closed in 1996. Joshua Santillana for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In the U.S., the federal and state health programs Medicaid is ending its continuous coverage very soon. What can individuals do to stay insured, and what are states doing to help? Anna Kui reports.
The Medicaid continuous coverage ends on March 31, 2023, leaving states with the great task of ensuring millions of eligible individuals stay covered. In March 2020, Congress passed the family's first Coronavirus Response Act. It required states to keep Medicaid enrollees in the program until the end of the month in which the public health emergency ends, regardless of their eligibility. In exchange, states received an increase in federal funding for Medicaid reimbursement, known as the Federal Medical Assistance Percentage. The public health emergency for COVID-19 in the U.S. is set to expire on May 11, 2023. So why is the continuous enrollment ending before the public health emergency expires? Well, part of the year-end legislation that was signed into law by Congress in December 2022 was delinking the continuous enrollment provision from the public health emergency, setting that certain end date of March 31. States must then resume reviewing all Medicaid enrollees' eligibility by April 1 and begin terminating coverage for those found ineligible. During this process, referred to as unwinding, Medicaid agencies will have 12 months to initiate renewals and 14 months to complete them. In that same spending bill signed into law in December, the federal government gradually phases out the enhanced federal Medicaid matching funds through the end of 2023. This additional funding will help support states in managing the large number of eligibility reviews ahead of them. Federal eligibility requirements must be met by the states to receive the increased reimbursement during the phase-out period. In addition, they have to maintain updated contact information for all enrollees and make good faith efforts to contact them before terminating their coverage due to returned mail. The Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that as many as 14 million people could lose Medicaid coverage when the continuous enrollment provision ends. Medicaid enrollment has increased by over 20,546,000, up 32.2% since February 2020. Medicaid is a federal and state program that helps people with limited income and resources to cover medical costs. Here in the U.S., it is the largest source of funding to cover medical and health-related services for individuals and families with low income. In Las Vegas, Anna Cui reporting from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Another train got derailed in Delphos City, Ohio on Sunday midnight. The train tumbled a pair of electrical posts and crashed at some intersections after it got off track. Reports say there were no injuries, while the train does not transport any harmful chemicals.
In Papua New Guinea, the governor of Port Moresby is back in action after medical leave. Upon his return, he underscores the benefits of overall fitness and a healthy lifestyle. Echo Ortaleza Quinola has the details.
Hello everyone, join me as I present to you the launching of the Walk for Love 2023.
Port Moresby City Manager Rabu Frank leads the National Capital District employees and visitors in welcoming the return of Governor Powes Parkop from his medical recuperation. The governor resumes office routines. He calls for the rise of one people, one city. His main focus is to have clearer roadmaps for a clean and safer Port Moresby. Parkop attends the Active City Development Program, Walk for Love. A Healthy City is an active city event headed by Fazila Vazari. This also serves as the launch of Active City Events Calendar 2023.
I'd like to firstly praise the God Almighty for helping me to and giving me back my life to come back and be here with our people, our city, our country. I'm so happy to be back. Secondly, I would like to thank everybody for all their prayers, helping me in their thoughts, sending me energy to recover. And third and foremost, I want to encourage everyone, to make their health a priority.
Parkop reiterates the importance of health, staying fit, and diet consciousness.
We got to, for me, to keep on improving my health and fitness, wellness, and motivate more people to take up their own health, take ownership, and be responsible for it. And at the same time, pursue their goals in their life. The two has to go together. It cannot be separated. So, I'm looking forward now with this emergency behind me. I'm looking forward to, getting back to drive our city, making it more active, but making it, importantly, making it clean, peaceful, safe for everyone, healthy, making it more planned and livable, and of course, prosperous.
With the presence of the city's action man, Port Moresby continues with its growth and progress.
Eco Hortaleza Quinola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Electoral reforms in Mexico sparked a large protest Sunday in Mexico City. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets demonstrating against changes that they say threaten democracy. The changes reduced the budget of the agency that oversees elections and trains people to work at polling stations. As well, punishments have been reduced for candidates who do not report campaign spending. Many of the protesters say President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador wants to return to an era when the government controlled elections. Others fear there will be miscounting of votes and overspending by candidates, something that was common in the 1990s. Lopez Obrador rejects the criticism, saying he'd rather spend the money helping those living in poverty. Mexicans go to the polls next year. Lopez Obrador is not eligible to run again, but his Morena party is likely to be re-elected and remain in power.
Civil society organizations and journalists held a march against discrimination in Tunis. Protesters say they condemn racial discrimination and fascist discourse that targets migrants from sub-Saharan Africa. President Kais Saied has come under fire recently for referring to sub-Saharan migrants as hordes, saying their presence in Tunisia was a demographic threat to the country.
Lebanese Central Bank Chief Rian Salameh and his former assistant Marian Hawayek are charged with embezzlement of public funds and money laundering. Salameh denies all accusations against him despite numerous complaints, investigations, and a travel ban issued to him a year ago. Sonntag Zeitung e-paper says 12 Swiss banks have received approximately $500 million. Yet the federal prosecutor claims the embezzled amount is indefinite. Another source adds the funds have already been frozen. Lebanon started an investigation into Salameh's assets 2 years ago when Switzerland's public prosecutor requested for aid. The two governments found out the accused made fund movements worth more than $300 million.
The fight against illegal mining in Brazil has been stepped up. A dozen federal agents from the country's environmental agency raided an illegal mining camp. Armed with rifles and dressed in camouflage, the agents dismantled the camp. It was located inside of the land of the indigenous Yanomami. Agents destroyed engines, seized equipment, precision scales, and a flask of mercury. They also found bags of cassiterite ore, which is used in the manufacture of metal alloys. One miner arrested by authorities says illegal mining will not end. He says the lure of big money will keep it going. Yanomami leaders say about 20,000 illegal miners have invaded their territory. They say the miners pollute their land and rivers and cause other destruction. Coming right up, 4 new criminal charges filed against Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX. Rescue spacecraft docks with International Space Station. And police discover influencers' dismembered body in pots and fridge. Catch more news when Mata ng Agila International returns.
The former boss of collapsed crypto exchange FTX has been hit with 4 new criminal charges. Prosecutors accuse Sam Bankman-Fried of conspiring to make illegal political donations and commit bank fraud. Authorities say the donations gathered were from corporate funds that are allegedly evaded by the former FTX boss. Regardless, his spokesman declined to give comments on the issue. On October 2, Bankman-Fried is set to meet with Judge Louis Kaplan for a court trial.
An unmanned Russian Soyuz spaceship docked early Sunday with the International Space Station. It will eventually be the ride home for 3 astronauts whose initial return vehicle was damaged by a tiny meteorite. The damaged craft began leaking coolant in mid-December after being hit by what U.S. and Russian officials believe was a tiny space rock. It was decided it was too dangerous to use the craft to bring the astronauts back home. The 3, 1 American and 2 Russians, will return home in September. They had originally been on a 6-month mission that would be over at the end of March. But with no one to replace them, they will now spend almost a year in space. The damaged spacecraft is expected to depart for Earth with no one aboard in late March.
Arsenal maintained 2 points clear at the top of the Premier League. Special thanks to their 1-0 win on Saturday's game. Our UK correspondent Keith Dimabuyo has the details.
Arsenal remain 2 points clear at the top of the Premier League thanks to a 1-0 win at Leicester on Saturday, as Manchester City maintained their pursuit of the Gunners by thrashing Bournemouth 4-1. The defending champions, Manchester City, put Bournemouth to the sword to cut the gap at the top back to 2 points. Liverpool failed to make amends for their 5-2 thrashing at the hands of Real Madrid in midweek in a poor 0-0 draw at Crystal Palace. The Reds' chances of Champions League football next season are looking slim as they remain 6 points adrift of 4th place Tottenham. Leeds have not won a league game since before the World Cup break, a run which saw Jesse Marsch sacked. But they snapped that streak by beating Southampton 1-0 in a clash between the bottom 2 before kickoff at Ellen Road. West Ham were the other big winners of the day in the battle to beat the drop, as 4 goals in the final 20 minutes potentially saved David Moyes' job in a 4-0 win over Nottingham Forest. Everton slipped back into the drop zone after losing 2-0 at home to Aston Villa. From the United Kingdom, this is Keith Dimabuyo for Matan ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Organizers of the Metro Manila Film Festival, or MMFF, announced 8 official films participating in the first ever Summer Film Festival. Vin Pascua has the details.
The Metro Manila Festival, or MMFF, had a great turnout of entries for the first ever Summer Film Festival. Of the 33 films submitted, 23 were new ones, while 10 were resubmitted from the 2022 MMFF in December. This is the largest number of entries in the history of the MMFF. MMFF 2022 Selection Committee Chairman Boots Anson Roa Rodrigo and MMDA Acting Chairman and MMFF Overall Chair Attorney Artes presided over the announcement of official participants. Participating films include Apag, starring Coco Martin, Lito Lapid, Gladys Reyes, and Jacqueline Jose, directed by Brillante Mendoza. About Us But Not About Us, starring Romnick Sarmienta and Elijah Canlas, directed by June Robles Lana. Here Comes the Groom by Kim P. De Leon, Enchong D. and Baris Racal, directed by Chris Martinez. Kahit Maputi Na Ang Buhok Ko, the music of Ray Valera by R.K. Bagaching and Meg Imperial from the direction of Joven Tan. Love You Long Time by Carlo Aquino and Aisel Serrano from J.B. Habak's direction. Single Bells by Alex Gonzaga, Angeline Quinto, and Alger Abrenica, directed by Fifth Solomon. Unravel, a West Side love story by Gerald Anderson and Kylie Padilla, in the direction of R.C. De Los Reyes, and the movie The Book I Saw by Bella Padilla and Yao Ming Gan from the direction of Bella Padilla. The Parade of Stars will be held on April 2nd in Quezon City, while the awards night will be on April 11th. I am Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In other news, authorities discovered the dismembered body of 28-year-old Hong Kong model Abby Choi inside a refrigerator last Friday. The prominent influencer was reported missing last February 2022. Police reports say they discovered the strips of Choi's tissue in pots of soup, meat grinder, and electric saw from the rental unit. But whereabouts of Choi's head and torso or hand were unknown. Sources say the suspects rented a flat to dispose the body of Choi. Investigators also found a number of Choi's belongings such as identity and credit cards. Authorities arrested as primary suspects the parents and elder brother of Choi's ex-husband. Police have no idea about the location of Choi's husband, but they claim the family allegedly attempted to mislead investigators. Meanwhile, initial investigations point out the family has financial disputes, and this could be a motive for the socialite's murder. Choi appeared on last week's digital cover of the prominent fashion magazine L'Officiel Monaco.
Sci-fi comedy Everything Everywhere All at Once continued its dominance of this year's Hollywood award shows by earning top honors from the Screen Actors Guild on Sunday. The film captured Best Actress for Michelle Yeoh, Best Supporting Actor for Ke Huy Quan, and Best Supporting Actress for Jamie Lee Curtis. The movie's 94-year-old patriarch James Hong stole the show at Sunday's gala, collecting the night's final prize of Best Cast in a Motion Picture, the ceremony's equivalent of Best Film. Voted on by more than 120,000 members of Hollywood's acting union, the SAG or SAG Awards are an important precursor for the Academy Awards, whose largest voting block is also actors. Other winners from the mainly Asian cast of Everything Everywhere All at Once also referred to Hollywood's long struggle with diversity.
Giant inflatable sea creatures and cartoon characters fill the sky over Pasir Gudang in Malaysia on the weekend. More than 100 people from 40 countries took part in the Pasir Gudang World Kite Festival. This is the 25th time the event has been held. It returned after a 3-year hiatus due to the pandemic. Some of the entries in the 5-day event include South Korean rapper Psy aboard a giant galloping horse, a transformer robot, and a menacing octopus.
Well, it's the first day of the week, and to help you go through this week, here's a quote from Albert Einstein, a German-born physicist. If you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal, not to people or things.
Happy Monday.
Oh, yeah. You know, this is easier said than done, don't you believe?
Yes, yes.
I mean, a lot of people, many people I know, build their dreams around a person. And so when they get brokenhearted, it breaks them almost completely, and it's so hard to recover.
I really understand, but, you know, I guess it's better to tie around ambitions around the people you love rather than things, because as they say, things are temporary, right? So if the problem is people, maybe they have to see like, you know, a love guru.
That's so true. And if people that surround you really love you, they will support you with achieving your goal.
That's correct. And that's when you know you have found your own tribe.
That's so right.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Ricky Matay.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.